What really happens to a soldier when they take a life? And why does modern training make it easier to kill but harder to live with afterward? In this video, we're diving into the controversial and eye-opening book On Killing by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. It's a raw, psychological look at what it takes to kill and what it costs. Stick around for a full preview, key insights, and some critical analysis of the arguments Grossman makes. On Killing was written by Dave Grossman, a retired U.S. Army Ranger and psychology professor. He's one of the leading experts on what he calls killology, the study of the psychological effects of killing in combat. Since its first publication in 1995, this book has become required reading in military and law enforcement circles, but it's also drawn attention and criticism from psychologists, sociologists, and educators alike. Grossman's central claim is bold. Humans are not natural-born killers. In fact, the average person has a strong, innate resistance to killing. But modern military training and increasingly media and video games have been designed to overcome that resistance. Let's break down the major ideas Grossman explores. 1. Innate resistance to killing. Grossman argues that most soldiers historically have refused to fire their weapons in battle. He cites studies from World War II where up to 75% of soldiers didn't fire at the enemy, even when under fire themselves. The reason? A deep psychological aversion to killing another human being. 2. Conditioning soldiers to kill. To combat this, militaries adopted reflexive fire training, replacing bullseye targets with human-shaped silhouettes, for example. This type of operant conditioning desensitizes soldiers and builds muscle memory for lethal action. Grossman likens this to the way Pavlov trained dogs, creating a stimulus-response link. 3. The aftermath psychological cost. Even with training, the cost doesn't disappear. Grossman explores PTSD, moral injury, and the long-term trauma many veterans face, not just from the fear of combat, but from the guilt of killing. He argues that the act of killing, even when sanctioned, leaves deep psychological scars. 4. Violence in society and media. In later chapters, Grossman shifts to civilian life. He warns that violent video games, movies, and media use the same kind of conditioning that the military employs, desensitizing people to violence and potentially lowering the threshold for real-world aggression. On Killing is compelling because it challenges our assumptions. We tend to think of soldiers as being trained to kill easily, but Grossman reminds us that the act goes against something deeply human. His writing combines military research, historical analysis, and first-hand accounts to paint a full picture. The book also opens up necessary conversations about mental health in the military. Grossman was among the first to really emphasize the psychological weight of killing, not just the stress of combat. Another strength is accessibility. The writing is direct, emotional, and thought-provoking. Whether you're a civilian, veteran, or academic, you'll find it engaging, even if you don't agree with everything. But On Killing isn't without flaws, and critics have pointed them out. 1. Questionable data. One of the most cited stats in the book, that 75% of World War II soldiers didn't fire their weapons, comes from historian S.L.A. Marshall. But Marshall's methodology has been widely criticized and even discredited by some scholars, so that core piece of evidence might not be as solid as it seems. 2. Simplified psychology. Grossman tends to generalize psychological responses to killing, but mental health outcomes vary greatly depending on the individual, context, and culture. Critics argue that he overstates certain claims, particularly about media violence and its effects on children. 3. Controversial claims about video games. Grossman's arguments about video games have especially drawn fire. He equates first-person shooters with military conditioning tools and even blames them for school shootings, a claim many researchers say lacks nuance and overstates causality. On Killing isn't perfect, but it's important. It asks questions few others do, and it forces us to think about the psychological cost of violence, not just for those who suffer it, but for those who inflict it. If you're interested in military history, psychology, or the ethics of violence, this is essential reading. Just be ready to approach it critically. Grossman offers a powerful perspective, but it's one voice in a larger conversation. Have you read On Killing? Do you agree with Grossman's views, or do you think he overreaches? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you found this preview helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep dives into challenging and thought-provoking books. See you in the next one.